So the first action that has to be implemented, and I'm glad that during the last failed budget presentation, the leader of the DA pointed out this matter, pointed out that there is an inflated and a bloated public service expenditure in the country. Well, one of the first things that needs to be articulated is that the cost of the public service must be cut at least in half. The cost of the public service in South Africa is destroying the economy, is destroying the ability of the economy to invest by taking the surplus from the private sector and giving it, instead of being invested, is giving it for private consumption in the public sector, by the public sector. And what do these public servants who getting these hugely inflated salaries do with their salaries? They buy imports. When you look at the cars that the same leaders of the civil service are driving, none of them buy cars made in South Africa. When you meet the so-called Blue Light Brigade, there isn't a single car in their convoys that is made in South Africa. They are whole imported, fully made up. I was in China once, and I once asked one of my hosts in the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, what car does the president of China drive? He drove a 5 Series BMW made in China. The presidents of South Africa, I don't know what make of SUV they drive, none of them are made in South Africa. We do make SUVs in South Africa, but this guy don't buy South African products. Secondly, because of the huge amount of money that is going to the public service, our country is de-industrializing. Industrialists are not able to keep up with the modern technology for their factories. So the factories are falling more and more behind in terms of their technology and in terms of their ability to be competitive. The consequence is that the market that South Africa should be most competitive in, which is the African market, actually the Chinese are capturing that market from South Africa. Why? Because we are not investing in the technology in our companies that we need to invest in. I can go on and on about what needs to be done, but my point is that what we need to hear from is not from me as an analyst. We need to hear from our political leaders like Helen Zille what should be done, to a program of action that we, this citizens, should do, action in order to get our country out of the trap which it has been entrapped in by the nationalists in this country over the last 100 years. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Moeletsi, thank you. That was insightful, interesting, honest, brutally honest as always, and lots of questions have already come through. I guess the one thing that did kind of puzzle me a little bit, you said in the most recent elections, South Africans rejected nationalism. But if you add up the Nationalist Party of MK and the Nationalist Party of the EFF and the ANC, it's about the same as it was before. Can you just unpack that for us and explain how they rejected the nationalism.
Nobody expects EFF to become the government of South Africa. What you are seeing is a protest vote. Nobody is expecting the MK party to be the government of South Africa. This is a protest vote for the main party, against the main party. So that's why I'm saying the voters have rejected nationalism. They are not expecting EFF and MK party to become the government.
Before we go to the questions, I'd love to get your thoughts. What Bill Johnson was saying a little bit earlier about the activists and being dissociated with the vast majority of South Africans. And we know it's not the first time we've heard this. We've heard it from the IRR over decades, that South Africans are conservative Christians, 86% claim to be Christians. They work on those values, and they are not associated with the values that are projected by those who are benefiting from the system, which you articulated very well. But how do you make that connection? How do political parties make that connection to the people without breaking the ANC completely?
Well, why should you worry, or why should the voters worry about whether the ANC is broken or not broken? What the voters want is a future for their children, so that their children are better off than they are. They want stability in the country so that there is no crime, so that women can walk on the street at night without being raped. That's what the voters want. If the ANC cannot deliver, the ANC had promised it would deliver that. I was one of those who was making those promises that we would deliver that. We failed to do so, so the voters are saying no to the ANC.
So are you now saying that that's the opportunity for the second biggest party?
Yes, that's why I was saying I'm glad Helen is here, because at least she can hear that her challenge is to transform the DA into a 51% party. Because that's what we have to be, that's what our constitution allows for. Continuing with coalitions which include the ANC is not going to take the country anywhere. It provides temporary stability, but this is temporary stability. It will not bring about the economic change that we need to be brought about, because the ANC will use its leverage within the government of national unity to block the economic changes that are necessary.
Helen did ask a question of you. She says, Mr. Mbeki, in a proportional representation system, parties do not normally get above 50%. Proportional representation creates coalition politics. Could you comment on this, please?
But we shouldn't be having a pure proportional representation system. This was agreed at CODESA that after the first election, there will be introduction of constituency systems of one form or another. And if you remember, the late Professor van Zyl-Slabbert was appointed by Parliament to come up with a proposal that includes constituencies. Now, the ANC has been opposing the introduction of constituencies. So what we have to do to be fighting for amongst ourselves, that all of us in this room should be fighting for the introduction of constituencies. The Constitution is clear that there has to be proportionality, yes, but the constituency system has to be introduced.